Give it a few seconds. Alright, hey everybody, guess what? It is Saturday, November 16th, 2019, and Ed made it like 1 minute before the show, so he actually is here. We're going to have him say a few things, a little bit of an intro. Ed, little bit of intro, otherwise I'm going to not be able to play the soundbite. And then we'll play a soundbite that Ed wanted me to play. Ed, why don't you take it away?
Okay, thank you. I'd like to thank everybody for joining us this evening. And this is a major part what's coming down the pike, that dealing with what's going on, and people are still not comprehending how to file this stuff and what's going on. Everybody wants to go on their structure of, and no offense to religious people, but when you keep writing this stuff in religion, you're not going to get anywhere. And that's the point that you've really got to start coming to the comprehension of the fact that you're doing in religion, you're not going to get anywhere. Because religion has nothing to do with the court system when you're filing a criminal case. Because the religion is not the court case, not the criminal charges. And that's the one thing you've got to come to the reality of this point, because if you keep going on this point that says religion and God gives me these rights, God gives you absolutely no rights in your Bible. There is no rights given by God in your Bible. Absolutely none. So once you realize that there's no religious rights in your Bible, then you can start getting somewhere. But when people still go on and say that, my religion and I have rights by God, well, when you meet God, and let's get God out there, when you meet God, then you get your religion rights. But until you meet God, I don't see your religion. See, this is the point that you got to comprehend to the real world, not the thing of administrative rules. And that's what you're living in, and you got to realize you're living in administrative rules. And so people start realizing and accepting that you're living in administrative rules, and this is the way it really happens. This is how you're going to solve the problems. This is how you're going to win your court cases. And the main thing is that when it really comes down to it, do you really want to go to court? No, you don't want to go to court. You want your cases dismissed before it goes to court. Then if you have to file criminal charges afterwards, then you can file criminal charges. But if there's nothing to file, you can't do anything about it. That's where you have to come to the conclusion of the fact of what your case is. And remember, if you're kidnapped or held for ransom, you have to go. Now, like I said, I'm working on helping some people out on a court case in the state right now that I'll have published after we get some of this done. But I want you to comprehend that the main point on this is that I'm going through, and it's a lot of work, because I have to read their state administrative rules. I have to go through their state structure, so that way I can file under their state of their structure. And they actually got stuff each state has it in each state where you could file on their own judges and stuff, criminal charges on them in their states. And so you have to file their rules, their regulations, and put that in the structure. And once you comprehend how simple that really truly is compared to what we think it is. See, that's the point. Nobody is writing this together the way, basically what I'm putting together, because you have to write the criminal charges by law. Because if you don't write the criminal charges, there's no crime to exist. So you have to write the criminal charges to produce the charges to make it a reality. So if there's no criminal charges, there's nothing there. And that's where you have to come up with a conclusion of, is it a crime or not, and can you prove a crime? Statute codes and administrative rules are not crimes. So anyhow, we're going to go ahead and play this, and then I'll get back into some other stuff I've come to a discussion, and we're trying to get put together so that way people can see the other part of the truth on some things, especially with House Resolution 192 that I've it looks like I've found the backboard to it. So anyhow, let's go ahead and play that, and then I'll get back.
It's going, just wait.
And now we must turn to the issue of gun violence in America today, because the latest mass shootings in Aurora, Colorado, and Newtown, Connecticut leave us all, liberal and conservative, Republican and Democrat, appalled and disgusted at the carnage. Now, some people, and that includes many of you in this room tonight, want to place the blame for this horror on things like 30-round magazines or semi-automatic rifles. We want to blame something, anything that we can control. But what we really want to ban is violence and murder and insanity. Now, we don't talk about that, though, because deep in our hearts, each of us knows that violence and murder and insanity are built into the human condition and likely always will be. You know, there are two kinds of animals in this world, predators and prey. No one watches a leopard chase down a gazelle and denies that the gazelle has a right to use its hooves and horns to protect itself from the predator. But there are people in this room tonight and all across the country who would deny that same right to self-defense to other human beings. Such people seem to think that the way to stop the leopard is to cut the horns off of the gazelle, that by somehow making it easier for the predator will simply go away. My friends, this is insane. When you make it easier for the predator, you get more predators. So let's start with the so-called assault weapons, more properly known as semi-automatic rifles. In 2011, the total firearm murders came to 8,583, according to the FBI. Now, during that time, the total murders committed by rifles, all rifles, not just semi-automatic rifles, were 323. That's 3% of all murders. Hammers and clubs kill half again as many people as rifles. Hands and feet murder twice as many. And knives kill 5 times more Americans than all rifles combined. Preventable medical errors kill about 98,000 people per year. Medical malpractice kills more than 12 times as many people as are murdered in the U.S. each year. That's more than 300 times the number killed by all rifles, not just the so-called assault rifles. And yet, no one talks about limits on hammers or knives or doctors or hospitals. No one does that because the good we perceive from hammers and knives and doctors far outweigh their perceived harm. And yet, studies show that firearms prevent anywhere from 800,000 to over 2 million violent crimes every year. The lowest estimate means that 100 times more violent crimes were prevented with firearms than the total murders committed with firearms. That's 100 times as many. Now, in October of 2007, Amanda Collins was walking to her car after a night class at the University of Nevada at Reno. Amanda had a concealed carry permit for her 9mm Glock that she carried for self-defense. Unfortunately for Amanda, UNR is, like most college campuses, a gun-free zone. So, like the law-abiding citizen that she is, she did not have her gun with her in this gun-free zone when she was attacked by James Bila. Bila raped her on the UNR campus less than 300 yards from the campus police office. He then walked away, and a few months later, this human predator went on to murder 19-year-old Breonna Dennison. Amanda Collins went on to say, quote, "I know, having been the first victim, that Breonna Dennison would still be alive had I been able to defend myself that night," unquote. Therefore, I am directing the virtual Attorney General to aggressively challenge any gun control laws that violate Amanda Collins' right not to be raped and Breonna Dennison's right not to be murdered. You're not forced to abandon your First Amendment right when you enter Chicago or New York, or your Fifth Amendment rights when you walk onto a college campus. As virtual president, I will veto on the spot, without hesitation, but with a great deal of pleasure, any and all attempts to destroy any of the Bill of Rights, of the Constitution of the United States of America. Because when it's all said and done, the Second Amendment to the Constitution is not there to protect us against criminals, and the people calling for gun control know this. That's why they want gun control instead of crime control. That's why they want laws that, at the stroke of a pen, turn law-abiding citizens into criminals. The Second Amendment is there to protect the American people from tyranny. The Second Amendment is there to protect the American people from politicians. The Second Amendment is there to protect the American people from us. Now, some politicians claim America deserves a vote on this issue. Okay, let's have a vote. Those of you advocating infringement on the right of the people to keep and bear arms need to go to the American people with the 28th Amendment, which would simply read, the Second Amendment to the Constitution is hereby repealed. That would, for the first time, give you the legal authority to do what you have been doing and what you are trying to do now in direct violation of your oath of office to defend the entire Constitution of the United States, not just the parts you happen to approve of. So go ahead, go to the American people and tell them that ultimate power is no longer to be vested in the people who can't be trusted with that power according to you. Tell them only the government can have that power now. You go out there and try to convince the people of the 38 states that you're going to need to get that amendment passed to agree with your opinion of them versus their opinion of you. I dare you. 12 million unarmed men, women, and children were unable to resist being murdered by their own National Socialist government in Germany. Perhaps 50 million unarmed men, women, and children were murdered by their own Union of Soviet Socialist Republics. 50 million Chinese murdered by their own government under Mao, who also disarmed his people. And in Cuba, and in Vietnam, and in the killing fields of Cambodia. Now you say that can't happen here? You say we're protected? By what? By the Constitution that you're in the process of destroying? You are in violation of your oaths of office by so much as introducing this legislation, let alone passing it. My fellow Americans, the previous inhabitants of this chamber watched as 100 million people were murdered after being disarmed by their own governments. Every single one of those men, women, and children were as real and precious and irreplaceable as the children at Newtown. And I tell you here and now that I will be damned if I will let that happen to the American people.
All right, that is Rick Sexton on gun control. It's just the audio, but it's very good. And think about it, seriously. When the public servants say you don't need a gun, or you don't need arms, or they're trying to limit it, that's the time to get a bunch of it ready, because they're going to come after you, just like Rick Sexton pointed out. Hey, Russia did it, Germany did it, China did it. I mean, almost every country that takes away the public's way of defending themselves, like Beto wanted to do, basically just wants to overrun you and be a dictator. So, Ed, why don't you continue on?
I appreciate it. Thank you. And thank you, everybody, again, for joining us this evening, too, for, furthering our education and the structure. It's all about life, learning the real truth compared to the fantasy that you think it is. And for those people who are religious, remember the Constitution gives you the right to your Bible, your belief. Your belief does not come into our courtrooms. Your belief does not come in our street corners. That's your belief, not mine, because my belief, I don't believe in that structure. Because my Bible is the Constitution of the United States, unincorporated, as well as the Native Indian treaties, the original ones of 1770, ratified in 1778 and in 1779 with the Constitution, and then the ones that were ratified and confirmed with the ones in 1786 or 1785 through 1889, excuse me. So those 1800 years and the 1700s are the law of the land, of this soil. Okay, you got to remember, back then they called it land, and then after the 14th Amendment, land became the sky, air, and water that the government, the corporation, that they claim ownership, because remember, the city, county, and state cannot own property. Your banks can't own property. And as soon as you accept the point that your banks cannot own property, they have no rights. See, that's your thing, that you have to prove they have no rights. And this is the point that people go, well, I have this and I have that, and it's like, I have a guy that says, it's like everybody goes, including myself, I have a right to travel, and we do, and so that's the point. But who gives you the right? Do you have a signed note from a judge that says you can't? No. What they're going to do is they're going to kidnap, harass you, and hold you for ransom. Rape, rob, and pillage, the great, and I'll say it, Christian way, because the Christians were the ones that came over and civilized the native men and women in this country. And so this is the one thing that you have to realize, that, that the Bible came over from England and Spain, raped the native men and women, murdered the women and men of this country, including the children. And the worst genocide in existence, not World War II, was the Native Americans. So, and it's amazing how the history does not tell the truth that meets the truth for the structure that's telling the truth. See, and that's the one thing that you've got to start comprehending and living in reality. I'm talking the real world. This is the point that, the real world, that is the main point. You have to live in the real world, not the fantasy pretend world. And that's where most people live, in this fantasy pretend world. And so when you're living in this fantasy pretend world, that's where nothing gets accomplished, nothing gets done. That's the problems that go on with this country. That's why there's so much problems we got. That's why all these so-called shootings are happening all around the country. So you got to realize that these people, are killing yourselves, killing your children, raping your children for money, and a strip search, if you get kidnapped and held for ransom with no criminal charges, and I mean no criminal charges, that's rape, rob, and pillage. That's a federal crime. But see, if you don't file the criminal charges, it does not exist. And see, this is the saddest point, because people don't get it. That you have to make sure that the law is written and followed. They wrote it. We quote it. Administrative rules. This is what the law is. So, and it's under maritime law. And people go, oh, the maritime law doesn't matter. Yes, it does, because when you go into court with that gold fringe flag in that court, it's maritime tribunal court law. That's a military tribunal. And see, that's the point. You got to realize that's a military tribunal court that you're going into. You're not going into a real courtroom. So when you go in that courtroom, and the minute you say, yes, judge, or you recognize that man, that domestic terrorist, technically, when you recognize him, because he is a domestic terrorist, you're admitting to crimes right there beyond the circumstances. And so it's your responsibility to protect your children. And people say, well, the state is supposed to do this and the state's supposed to do that. No, the state ain't there for you. And that's the one thing that you have to comprehend, that the state is not your friend. You're a senator and congressman, and technically, if you got a traffic ticket or violation or something like that, oh, that one's a simple one. And I'm talking very, very simple. You have to have it represented. You can go to your state representative and have them represent you. Absolutely. They're going to whine and cry like little women, but they don't want to represent you. But by law, they have to represent you. And so this is the point that, I've been working on some cases this week again, like I always do. And, when you work on these cases, and especially when you've been kidnapped and held for ransom, and this is the point that you got to realize, people are kidnapped and held for ransom. They're making an income off of your birth certificate insurance bond. And people say, well, that don't matter. People, wake up. It does too matter. See, you got to come to living in reality, not this structure, whatever you think it is. And that's the problem we are really having right now. That's why the children are not educated. I mean, it's interesting. I talk to kids all the time when I'm going through downtown in my corporation city. And we got the worst education in the country. You know, I'm watching these guys that are putting their name in the ring, running for congressmen and senators and stuff. Oh, we're going to improve all this stuff. We're going to do all this stuff and make life better for you. And not one of them have a constitution comprehension of what the law is. Not one of them. See, this is the point that when you realize that these men and women don't have a real reality of what's going on around you, with you, for you, your comprehension of your laws and regulations. See, remember, this is your laws and regulations because the first government is you, the people. You're the first recommendation of the government. You are the government. We, the people of the government, and that's called the native people. I hate to say it, but immigration has no damn rights in this country. You know, people go, "Oh, we have rights, and I'm an immigrant." No, you don't. Sorry to tell you, you have no rights. That's the problem. You don't have rights in our country. You have privileges. And we'll go through that again because I'll start putting out and reading the laws again because that's the whole point. You got to realize that you're privileged personnel. You don't have a right to be in our soil. And that's the one thing that everybody keeps going, well, I have this right, I have that right. Well, where is your right? Who tells you you have a right? Where is your proof that you have a right? In a democracy system, you have no rights. You know, that's the one thing that gets to me about the LGBT community and all these people. You know, we have rights, you know. We're going to do this. We're going to protect our people. You ain't protecting nobody. You're putting your kids in prison. You ain't even protecting your own children, your own bloodline. You don't even own your bloodline. You let the city and state control your bloodline. That's your problem. You let everybody else own you. You know, and that's the one thing. Go to our website, new.org and tracker. You'll see that, you know, oh, that's right. We have a listing up there, so you have rights, not privileges. And so you have to have and enforce your right. And if you want to go by a privilege, okay, you're privileged personnel. That means you don't have a right. And that's the point that you give that right up when you go in your state and you register your kids with the state. Because when you register your child with the state, you're giving your authority over to that state, corporation. Every state, every Secretary of State office is a branch of the federal government. And if you actually look at the terminology of what the federal government really is and the real term of federal government, that is called the British government. That's not American government. That's the British government. And so once you comprehend that that's the British government, and see, that's called the 1830 or 1878 bar exam, and that was done in August 21, 1878. That's called the bar, the British Auxiliary Register of the King and Queen of England. And so that's the one thing that you have to realize what the King and Queen of England is saying to you. They're telling you, and don't forget, that's the Roman Catholic Church. That's King James Bible. And I hate to say it that way, but that's exactly what it is. That's King James Bible telling you that you don't have a right. You know, and I mean, I get people all the time, quit going off on the Bible. Well, all right, but I know that I have rights. I file for my rights. I don't want privileges because the Bible doesn't give you rights at all, period. You have no rights with the Bible. Who's going to grant your rights? And the other point with the Magna Carta, and I'm dealing with that. And if you read your state constitution, the Magna Carta is in several of the structures of the state constitution. So, and that's the point that you got to read what it says, not what you think it says. See, this is the problem we have with so many people because they don't comprehend what the law is. You know, especially the native people. You know, as natives, very few of us know what's really going on in our country. We really don't even know what's really going on. I mean, and also, too, what was that? Last month, the United Nations moved into Utah to take it over. The state of Utah, that's right. Yeah, we're talking an act of war. The Geneva Convention is an act right now today. But is the media going to tell you that? Oh, no, they're running all these school shootings. And the other point is, that's why I wanted to play that audio tonight, Because the thing is we got all these new shootings coming up. Well, what kind of drugs are these kids on? How come the news media ain't talking about the psychological trauma of these kids, the medication they're on? These kids are on medication, but are they telling you about their medication? No, they're not doing that, because if you knew they were on medication, oh my God, you wouldn't buy half the stuff in the store on that and emotions. It is so sad, because it's so disgusting. Because everything is based on what they call the new structure. It's called feelers now by the Women's Crisis Creation Center. And they started doing that 18 years ago. When all this stuff was introduced, I remember when this shit was being introduced. And women would say, "Oh, you hurt my feelers." And it's like, God, we've lost reality, folks. Now the women are saying they got feelers. They don't have feelings. They have no emotions. So now we're coming into an era of dead people. And that's what they want on your birth certificate, because you're a dead man or woman.
Ed.
And that's the whole point. You're dead. You have no rights.
Ed.
So once you start realizing what your rights are and filing on your rights, once you sort of start putting these things together and realize you have a right versus a privilege, then you have to act on those rights. And once you start acting on those rights, now you have something you could do something about. But until you start acting on your rights, you have privileges. You have no rights. And so when it comes down to this, and I'm going to get into stuff I want to read on some stuff, but I'm trying to get this clarified to people's head. This is the reality. It's like the thing is that the 1938 Foreign Registration Act, file it. Every single court case or any letter you write to an elected and public servant, every letter, you include the 1938 Foreign Administration Registration Act, and you ask them in writing, are they registered? If they're not registered, by federal law, that's a 1-year prison sentence, mandatory. There's no forgiveness. It's mandatory on it. See, and that's the point that people don't comprehend, how this system is so set up. And everybody keeps going, well, we want to put new Constitution amendments in. And I keep going when I hear this from these morons. Yes, anybody who says that is a moron. They're an uneducated fool. They are so damn stupid, but the reason why they're doing that is they want to keep you in a democratic democracy so that way you have no rights. That way they make their living off of their nonprofit agencies, and that way you have no rights. That's the way it really works, folks. Nonprofit agencies, this is the one thing is that you got to realize that, 45, what is that form? That's a 4506A form. File it on your public servants. File that form on your public servants.
Ed.
It's your responsibility to file that.
Ed.
Because if you don't file it, go ahead.
Okay, this is like the third time I tried. You were talking about feelers. I'm looking at the dictionary right now, Wiktionary, and it's feeler, someone of something that feels, something ventured to test others' feelings, or what I think of feelers whenever I think of feelers, an antenna or appendage used for feeling, especially on an object.
Read that one more time, because I got one follow up on that one.
Okay, there's multiple definitions for feeler, but the ones that we're listening to now are basically someone or something that feels. So you're a feeler. Okay, that's nice. Something ventured to test another's feelings. I sent out some feelers to this, but they didn't seem interested, kind of attitude. But what I grew up with, the feelers. An antenna or appendage used for feeling, especially on an insect. You know those little things on ants? Those are feelers.
Mm-hmm.
How about on bees? Those are feelers. The antennas. So when women turn around and say, I got feelers, guess what? They're claiming they're an insect.
that's the point. You're claiming to be an insect, and women are claiming that they're an insect, that they're nothing. Because how many people kill an insect? Walk in, they see an insect, they just step on it with their foot. No emotions, no caring, no nothing. Oh, poor deal, it's dead. And that's what we're doing to your kids today. I mean, it's shameful that these kids, are being brought up with no education and no intelligence whatsoever. No intelligence whatsoever. And this is the sad that we're dealing with today, right now. And the children are the ones that are paying for it. So that's the point. And then what I was going to bring up, like I said, is like when people start going off on abortion. And I always find that interesting when people want to go off on abortion, when it really comes down to it. Oh, an abortion, and a woman shouldn't have a right to have an abortion. Well, it's the woman's body, number one. And if you take the woman's body away from the woman, you have no rights to yours. See, it's like the one thing that always gets to me about the gay and lesbian community. All right. Oh, we need to pass these laws to protect them. And it's like, you uneducated people, the Constitution protects every lawful bloodline native. End of story. Immigrants, they have privileges, so they have to go through administrative rules, and they have to go through an Admiralty one-court system. And Title 183331, I think that is. I'll have that up because I know I got it up. I'm working on a case on that one right now. But see, when it comes to a parasite, now when a woman gets pregnant, that's parasite. Basically, it's a bug feeding off of the body until it grows. So if we take away the woman's right to her body, that means no right to his body. And that's what these religious people want you to believe. Because if they can take away the woman's right, they take away the man's right. And I know you guys comprehend this reality, because if you don't comprehend this reality, this is the saddest part about you. And what you're doing to your children, what you're doing to your bloodline, what you're committing the crimes to your family. Because remember, it's your bloodline. That's why I always suggest to people, you have to file to own yourself. People go, well, why should I do that? Well, because under the law of Washington, D.C., the corporation, you are a citizen, and if you claim to be a citizen, and people say, well, the capital C is the Constitution citizen. Yes, I've done the research. I know what everybody's talking about, but I don't want to claim that because you don't want to give the opportunity for a public servant, a judge, a clerk, somebody in that profession, to make the decision for you of that circumstance. So I say native. I don't have a title of nobility. I'm not a servant. See, and that's the point, that you don't want a title of nobility. The minute you take a title of nobility, that means you have no rights. And I'm going to be getting into that one next week, because I want to get into this structure, explaining some of the court structures. Because once you sit there and say that I have a title of nobility, and I'm claiming to be this, and you go to England because you're not of American. Even lawyers, that's the other point that I argue with people. Lawyers do this and lawyers say that. And I'm going, yeah, okay, they can say that and do whatever they want. But you have to realize that you are the employer of that lawyer. So how come you're not standing up for your rights? How come you are not enforcing your rights? So that's the simplest part about this corporation structure. It's your rights. Some people say the Article 4, the fourth branch of government, people would say, technically it's, we the people. But, technically the first branch of government is we the people. And then the other point I want to make sure that people have got this comprehended. You're going to love this. I told you this was going to come out. And everybody thought I was crazy, but it finally came out. Trump's new executive order. And there's another surprise that's coming, that's going to be coming for people. I've been telling people that, we are getting listened to. I mean, I know, some people go, oh, you don't know what you're talking about, but the new order for Trump. I told you that's going to be setting out. New executive order protects the public against the administrative states. Oh, so you could file on a judge now to put him in prison. This is Trump. Your president, your corporation president, new executive order to go after your public employees when they kidnap you, hold you for ransom, do this dramatic charges to you, making a living off of you, destroying your life. So, and I told people that this executive order was coming, and people don't want to listen. That's the problem with people; they don't listen. And so, and that is the saddest part. When people are not listening, how are you supposed to reconcile? How are you supposed to stand up? How are you supposed to teach your children anything? See, this is the point that it comes down to. It's your responsibility. And you send your kids to school, and the kids go to school, and what do the kids get in school? Nothing. They don't get no education. Most of the time, they talk about BS, and then they sit there and have the cops come, and then they sit there and go, oh, well, we're going to show them the police car. We're going to show them the fire department. We're going to mind control the kids so that way they think that we're your friends instead of raping, robbing, and stealing from your children. And that's exactly what you do. And so I put this in his affidavit twice. I wanted to make sure. I think I did it 3 times because, like I said, it was interesting. I was writing paper, another information, and things were changing as I was writing. I thought that was interesting how it happens when I've been putting stuff together here lately again. So, but anyhow, arrest warrant does not authorize an officer to enter your home, including of a third party. All right? An officer, that includes a sheriff's deputy, that includes a police officer, that includes a caseworker, that includes any public servants, including a code enforcer of your city and county and state. The state and the county is a corporation, and they cannot, by law, be an injured party or write an affidavit. See, that's the one. You realize they can't be an injured party. And this is an actual law. And this goes to the structure, and this is manifestly such statements, and this cannot be properly considered and be used in any court. And this is called the United States versus Lovasco, Lovasco. That's the name of the court case, United States versus that name. And that is 431 U.S. 78397S CT.2044.52 LED 2D752. And this court case was done in June 9th, 1977. Okay, see, this is the thing that people think, oh, the cops can do this. They can't. And so, sometimes, when I put some of these court cases in, like I said, it's just frustrating when I go through this and I see it's, double tapped in this thing. But then it gets into the other point, is a search warrant. Search warrants has to be issued by a grand jury. And that means it has to be certified by a grand jury. A judge cannot issue an arrest warrant. Okay, and that's a search warrant. They have to be issued by a grand jury technically. And if a judge does emergency search warrant or a stay, what they call a stay, he has to make sure that he does it in ink. It cannot be stamped. If it's stamped, that's called forgery. That's a federal crime. Even by them, it's a federal crime. And see, even forfeitures on property and all that, it's a federal crime. And I'll find that I got to find a new law because there was a new court case that just came out and stated they cannot take property or take your car or stuff like that, forfeiture law anymore. The Supreme Court is still battling it because the police departments are panicking, going, well, then that way we're going to lose 35% of our budget. And some police departments run that at 40% of their actual budget, stealing your stuff from your car. And so when your car gets even towed by a private corporation that's called Grand Theft Auto, not only does the tow company go through it, but the cop goes through it. So you wonder why the stuff is missing when your car gets there. Hey, what a reality check. So this means the cop cannot do a third-party arrest, cannot come on somebody's property. And this is what I'm writing up in one of the cases I'm dealing with right now. And I got another one I'm dealing with that we're going to go through that here next week on the medical stuff. But that's another separate issue. I got to try to break these down to separate issues instead of going through everything at once, so that way it doesn't confuse people. So, but that's the one thing. In holding the police officer he's not liable and lawfully can enter anybody home, third-party home. So if you're living with somebody, that's the third party because, you got another party, one party, two parties, three parties. So you got to step out of the movie and watch the production of how these things work. So once you start putting all this stuff together and you start realizing how it works, and we'll get this up on the website if we haven't got it up yet, we'll get it. Excuse me. Sorry. We'll be getting this because I'll be taking the information off this one information pack I'm putting together for somebody right now, and we'll get it put up there, so that way you can do it because we don't need to have the names of people up there unless, we can put them in the public record stuff. We have the public records, so it's public records, so we can do it that way. Because I know the producer will say, hey, and so I had to think about that one, didn't I? So for a crime to exist, all right, there has to be an injured party, a corpus delicti, Title 18, 3771. Remember that when you write any of your paperwork, you have to include that corpus delicti in it. If you don't include the corpus delicti in it, that means you're a living man or woman. Your case doesn't exist. And remember, the most valuable thing, a judge, a clerk, state attorney general, district attorney, cop cannot write an affidavit by law. They'll get it, and then they'll have people go in, excuse me, and they'll try to force people into the structure. And so, and let me put it this way to you, and we do have the law. Police are public servants, officers, judges, cops are not immune from suit. Everybody would say, the cops are immune. No, they're not. Quit buying into this fish-smelling BS. Say public officers, and that means your clerk. That means even your clerk that's your secretary at the city hall. That means you're the structure of your, like one who collects for your water bills and all that. So you got to realize when they're collecting for your water bills and all that, they're an officer of the court system. And that's the other point we'll get up there because when you file your paperwork, you have to file it with, what is that called? Washington, D.C. Because everybody goes, I pay my taxes. And it's like, okay, slave, you're paying your taxes. Your state and federal income tax goes to the British government, the Queen of England, and the Vatican. And your property taxes get divided up. 60% of your property taxes goes to the Queen of England and the Vatican. 40% stays in their state coffers for the state elected and public employees to party on. And that's exactly what they do. That's their party fund. Hey, we can rape and rob and pillage. And so they had to give them something, and that's what they did. That's part of the structure. So it's illegal for a police department, that's what they're doing right now. See, they're trying to bankrupt the country. Because they can't, and this is where everybody keeps going with the Constitution. They can't alter the Constitution. Congress cannot even alter the Constitution. That is the law of the land. That is designed and contracted with the native treaties. The native treaties and the Constitution are the law of the soil. So when you go in, the only way they can arrest you and take you in and do all this is that you have to commit personal or personal property damage. So if you harm somebody one way or the other, you harm somebody's property, one way or the other, then you can be arrested. But if you haven't done personal and property damage, that's called kidnapping and holding for ransom. And so that's the way I've always been writing my paperwork for years when I've been kidnapped and held for ransom. So I quote the kidnapping and holding for ransom law in it. And so that's what you want to put into this structure is kidnapping and held for ransom. So, and that's the point when you start going through this and you start realizing the fact. And then form, you're going to love this one, folks. Form. You can write this down, form 14039, identity theft affidavit for the IRS. So that is an IRS form that for your identity theft that you have to file, and if you don't file your forms claiming your identity theft, you screwed up. See, they have this stuff written for you to file. It's your job to file this. If you don't file it, it does not exist. And see, that's where you have to come to the conclusion of that here is the form. Form 14039. And it's called identity theft. It's the IRS form. So when you claim identity theft, you better make sure your writing of identity theft is in there. You have to make sure that you're able to prove that factual information. It has to be factual. It cannot be anything. It has to be facts. See, it's like Sergeant Friday used to say on Dragnet all the time, just the facts, ma'am, just the facts, nothing but the facts. Hearsay is inadmissible, cannot be admissible in court. Even though sometimes these terrorists, domestic terrorists, put them in that structure. And you don't want to be playing their game. Because, see, I mean, right now I'm putting together, and I'm still doing the research on House Resolution 192, that we're supposed to be able to write off our taxes. You know, property tax and all that, all right? They want us to write it up. Well, I don't have a problem writing it up, but when they sit there and come after you and say, if you don't do this, that, and the other thing, we're all going to kill you. That's the problem I have. See, and that's the point. You have to file. They have forms already for you. And there's another form I got to find on complaints. Now, some of these forms that you'll find on the IRS stuff, they are done in red ink. See, and when they're done in red ink, now you know it means it's lawful, not legal. And that's the point that when it comes down to lawful and legal system, see, it's so simple. It's cut and dry once you step out of the movie, and all of a sudden, all these things come into place. You know, so when they all come into place, that's what you need to do is file that, the paperwork correctly. And you file that paperwork correctly, and now you start winning. And that's the point. You want them to stay away from you. I mean, I get very nervous when the cops travel around, and they're right now, and all of a sudden, you know, they're starting to wave at me with the paperwork I filed. All right, they're waving at me. That scares the hell out of me. That really does. You know, they should stay the hell away from me. I don't want to have contact with them. I'm not their friend. I'm not here to talk to them. I don't want to know what they're doing in their life. I don't care what they do. I just want to make sure that they're doing their job correctly as elected and public official. And if they're not doing their job correctly, they don't need a job. And this is the one point that we have to make sure that these people don't get a job, so we have to file them on their paperwork for them to lose their job. And yes, you can claim on them and even take them to a small claim court and go claim their pension. And that's what you want to do, is you want to claim their money, their pension, their assets. You want to own them. And see, once you own them, you're making headway. And see, that's the whole point, owning them. And that's how we win, own them. You know, you own them, there's no conflict of interest. And that's how we stop the conflict of interest in these things. Own them. And so when they sit there and go, oh, you don't have this right and you don't have that right, oh, yes, you do. You see, you have to claim your rights. You have to claim your status. You have to know who you are. That's the bottom line. You have to know who you are. And if you don't know who you are, and if you know that you're not a lawful bloodline native, then you have privileges, and that's the way it is. You have privileges. You don't have rights. But if you're a lawful bloodline native, that means you have rights, not privileges. And so that's the point. You know, you file your rights to own yourself, which I have done. I filed that and ran my stuff in the paper for a month on the West Coast here. And then I filed all my stuff in the House and Senate because I wanted to make sure that I was lawful, not legal. Because I don't want to be an owned slave. That's the point that people don't get. When you do that, you're an owned slave. And how do you stop being a slave? Own yourself. Own your rights. That's the whole bottom part of all this structure, is owning you. And so when you own yourself, that's how you win. And so, and we'll get this posted up, the form, and I think there's this form actually for identity theft should be probably on the front page, because people start comprehending that what identity theft is, they comprehending what the structure really is, how to protect yourself. Because like I said, I do the research on this stuff. I find this stuff. I find these forms, you know. I know, you know, like all these other people out there, and I talk to people all the time, they're going, well, this guy says that, and this guy says that, and it's like, okay, they say this, they say that, but when they write their court cases for you, do they write them for you? No, they don't write them with their administrative rules to protect you. They write them out there, and then I watch the other people go to jail. You know, I mean, I can get into, you know, a whole bunch of people on Facebook I can name and go off on these people. But the point being is why do we have to play this game when it comes down to it? These people are out there making a living off of you, and they're not really providing a service to you because you think that they're providing a service. You're filing some of their paperwork, and then some of you people end up in jail, and you're wondering why the hell you're in jail for. Because you filed their paperwork. Oh, yeah, you can file a claim. You know, I can file a claim. You know, that's the whole point. Anybody can file a claim. I want to file charges. Because once these men and women are convicted, then you can really go after their homes and stuff, and that's mandatory. That's a mandatory win. That's not a privileged personnel win. That's a mandatory win. You got them convicted, you just file the paperwork, and you move in their home. Now you own their home. You own their retirement. And so eventually we'll get some more of these paperwork and these forms up there, so this way you people get it, because we have to protect our bloodline. If we don't protect our bloodline, you don't protect your children. You can't blame somebody else in the world for not protecting you and your children. You know, and that is the bottom line when it comes down to this stuff. Because it's your children. They're not my children. I mean, you know, sad to say, but my two boys are dead. So, I mean, I deal with that. That's just life. I can't change it. But, you know, I can't sit there and go psychological and mental trauma over it either. I have to deal with the facts the way they are dealt to me. And that's the way life has dealt it to me, so I have to live it the way life dealt it to me. And it's like you have to live the way life dealt you things. So, I mean, and then people say, oh, what about counseling and all this stuff? You can go do counseling. And it's like, you know, people, you don't get it. You do counseling. And you go to a counselor, you give up your Constitution rights because you say you're not responsible, man or woman, to dictate and handle your emotions, your feelings, and your responsibilities. That's exactly what it means. And as soon as you start accepting that structure right there, and for the face of that right there, that's how you're going to be successful. You know? And that is the one thing that is going to make you a proud man or woman. Because now you have standing. Once you have standing and know your bloodline, and you claim your bloodline. So you have to claim your bloodline, and I'll repeat that till the dying day for myself, because I've only been dead a few times, you know. And that's medically proven. You know, I mean, you know, I think it's 13 times I've been dead. You know, and see, the thing is, people go, oh, Ed, you know, we get tired of hearing that. Well, you go die so many times. You go spend 4 months in ICU. You go see what it does to your body, your balance, and what you have to start using your mind to psychologically control yourself for your balance and stuff. You have to be more paying attention about your body structure than you ever did before. And that's the one thing that people don't comprehend. You have to pay attention to your balance, you know, equilibrium and all that shit when you die and you go to have these things or spinal stenosis and this stuff. You know, people don't realize what the structure is, what it consists of, really, truly. They don't think about the circumstances around when you die, what it does for you, how it takes a toll on you, what the circumstances it really does to you. And once you start seeing how that works, and you start understanding yourself, and I mean yourself, that's the whole point. You know, you have to realize what you are. You have to realize what your structure of your knowledge is. And once you start realizing what your knowledge is, and in that way you can sit there and start bringing the real truth out. Because if you don't bring the real truth out, who are you deceiving? Yourself. And that's how we can stop it, so we're not traumatizing our children. So, like I said, it's your responsibility to report identity theft. So, if you're kidnapped and held for ransom, you've got a driver's license. That means you signed to give your rights away. So, because you gave your rights away, that means you have to go sign it and reinstill your rights. Now, it's like the state of Oregon. I know for a fact they have a deal, and eventually we'll get that up there. I don't remember what the number is off the top of my head for the state of Oregon. But it's to relinquish your driving privileges. And that's exactly what this says by the Department of DMV, relinquishing your driving privileges. Not rights, privilege. So knowing what your privilege is. And see, that's the one thing. I don't claim these things. I don't sit there and claim them. I'm not out there trying to claim my standing. I'm not trying to claim a status of nobility. Because if you're a noble man, that means you're not an American. And that's technically a nobleman is called an esquire. Look it up. You'll be surprised what you really learn. And see, you get these guys on these talk shows that tell you, oh, that doesn't matter. And I mean, I'm talking, we got a lot of them out there, these law corners or law of this or that on these Facebook sites. And you got to remember, you have a lot of lawyers and attorneys doing talk shows on these Facebook and out there daily. You know, and they're keeping you hooked in. Oh, this sounds good. You think it's good, but they're keeping you literally, physically, mentally, and emotionally still hooked in their system. That's how they keep their job. They want their job. They don't want you. They don't care about you. As soon as you comprehend that they don't care about you and you have to protect your children, your bloodline, then you start winning. But until that day happens, you're the one that's paying the price on this structure. And that's why I do suggest that when you do these things, make sure that every time you make a complaint, you make sure that you file their complaint form, but you make sure it's a criminal charges. They have a complaint form, so they're doing a whining form. Then you say, see attached, or if you got the complaint form, you're able to put it out and put your charges in that complaint form of theirs on the internet or however you can do it. Because they're saying, oh, you have to file a complaint. A complaint is a whiner. It's a wham-wham. You know, look at the dictionary in the Bible. You know, complaint, wham-wham. That's all it is, a complainer. And so that's the point, that you don't want to sit there and be a complainer. You want to be able to make sure actions are dealt with. You know, you want to make sure that the criminal charges are filed on this. And I'll make sure a lot of this stuff is put in the comments after when we close tonight. I'll put some other stuff in that'll blow your mind out, because if you don't, you have to file your rights. And there's actual forms now that the Department of Justice is coming out with, actual forms on this stuff on the Department of Justice websites. I was shocked to hear that and see that. You know, I was totally shocked to see that. So when I saw that, I mean, I was just blown away. I just couldn't believe it. I just, it's amazing. And then the other point too, I will be going through my friends list and the people that, you know, keep sending me to join groups. So I'll be going through that, because I get so disturbed when, you know, I post the talk show up or stuff, and then next thing you know, I get, you know, standards on violating standards. But the only reason why that happens is that somebody says, oh, he did it. See, Facebook doesn't really do all that. That's somebody complaining on you. So that's how you get violation of standards, is because of that. And it's knowing what it is, learning to read between the lines, read the contracts. YouTube came up with a new contract. That's the other thing, and YouTube is owned by Verizon now, that is owned by the Queen of England. It's a company out of Canada who her Verizon is owned by now. It's not an American company. So it's learning how they're buying up the structure and keeping you in their system. It's like America's Got Talent. Ooh, everybody wants to watch America's Got Talent. You know, Simon Cowell, British man, comes over to this country and then keeping you in the British structure. Pay this, you know, and it costs you every time you call into these programs. It costs you $1.92. You know, listen to the words that these things of these British people, the way they're talking. I mean, all your late night talk show hosts are all from England now. There ain't no Americans in it. It's not like Johnny Carson. There are all these British people that are running your programs and TV stations now. It's all mind control. They're walking you through this to make sure that you have no control over your own mind. And that is a fact. TVs have been doing this for years. They started really doing this in the 70s. And so once you start realizing that this is what's really going on in your structure, in your life, in your structure of life, so that's what it really comes down to. It really comes down to that point right there. What is happening around you? How is this affecting your life? How is this taking from you? And that's where you have to start standing up for yourself. If you don't start standing up for yourself, nobody else is going to stand up for you. And that is a fact. It's not hearsay. So, you know, and that's the point that we've got to be able to protect our bloodline, your bloodline. You have to protect it. That's not nobody else's job. That's your job to protect your bloodline. And so I was going to look up something, but I'm not going to do that till next week because my computer just crashed again, and so I don't know where everything went. So I got to reboot everything again. So, but anyhow, because I had another thing I wanted to bring up tonight, but you know, this is the point of knowing your rights and bringing up when you do that. Like I said, I brought the one form, and this is the form that you need to file on identity theft. You need to file this stuff. A DA cannot file it on your behalf. A cop cannot file it on your behalf because they're a hearsay witness. And so I want you to get to comprehend this reality. You know, I mean, I've got these people that send me videos about their kid being kidnapped and taken and held for ransom. And then it's like, all right, how do you want to do this? You know, this is what you have to do. This is how to solve the issue. You know, and then I always like it because I've actually had people say, oh, that's just too much work for me to do. And I'm like, what do you mean too much work for you to do? You know, it's like I get the feeling like I'm interfering in a video game. And that is the one thing that is so sad when you're starting to feel like you're interfering into their video game. I mean, most of the kids in the 90s today, everybody's taught in computer games, everybody's on a laptop, everybody's dialed in a phone. I always watch, I have fun when I'm going up in the big cities like I do going up again. I love going down and watch people watcher. I've been doing that for 40 years. And now it's funny when you get to watch kids walking telephone poles because they're paying attention to their phone and they're not paying attention to what's going on around them. And it's so funny when you watch these kids, they're walking right in a telephone pole. You know, and then they're cussing at people, and I've actually watched a couple of these kids go out and start cussing people because they're walking down and walking the telephone, and then they blame somebody else who's walking down the street near them like it's their fault because they walked into the telephone pole. So, and that's the problem here, folks. This is the thing that, you know, people are, you know, they're getting away with this crap. And that is, like I said, it comes back to the saddest part of this reality. They're getting away with this stuff. So anyhow, we're going to go ahead and jump off. Let's open up the line, see if anybody's got any comments they'd like to bring in tonight. And then that's the other point, too, is that, you know, we do have our sites up called New Oregon Trackers on Facebook. We do have the United States for Elected and Public Employees Oversight Committees. Or servants, I should say. And then I have the Recall Kate Brown, because I'm one of the original ones who filed on recalling Kate Brown. Because I filed on her, the original one that filed on her, because Kate Brown destroyed my family back in 2006 when she told me, oh, Ed, that's called, that's not a crime, Ed. That's called civil rights violation. And I said, no, it's a criminal thing what you and these other people did to me and my family. And see, if they can convince you that it's a civil matter, all right, that goes to a Roman Catholic Vatican Church court system, Article 1 legislative court system. So people don't comprehend the real civil war what really happened. There was never a win of any war. It's always been a ceasefire. And that's the other thing that really concerns me right now with the United Nations on this soil. And yes, folks, they're on this soil. I put up a structure where they already have 250,000 armed military machine gun vehicles and storage units across the United States. No bullshit. How many of you people seen all those videotapes with the trains with all their tanks and all their equipment being transported around? And you wondering what's going on. They're in Utah right now as I speak. They're getting ready for war, folks. And then people say, well, I got my arms. I can do this. Well, when you're only one man or one woman or 50 men and 50 women going against 1,000 or, 80,000 of these people, and you're only a fraction? You're only a fraction of the structure. So that's the one thing. We ain't united like we were 30, 40, 50 years. Especially we sure the hell ain't united like we were in the 1800s in the Civil War. Because we knew with the Civil War we fought the British government. We did that in 1770, 1776. That's what all that was about. British war, where we have a right to our arms. We have a right to our structure. And that is a major part right there. It's our structure for native. File your native. Prove your bloodline. Prove you're lawful, not legal. Once you're sitting there and claiming that you're legal, then that way you have no rights. And like I said, it's so disturbing. We got all these people on the Facebook, and a lot of these people are attorneys, lawyers, making a buck for themselves at your expense. And then you wonder why nothing's getting done. You got to file your criminal complaint. Like I said, I just told you what the new structure with Trump did. He just filed the new administrative rule. And what does that do? Oh, that's simple. That administrative rule, get a copy of it. Make sure you print that copy and have it on file. We'll get that up. I request my copy actually from the White House myself. And we get that up, but get this new administrative rule that just passed. I told you it was coming. And see, now we have rights. Now he's putting in things that you can go after your public servants for. That's like I said, I'm repeating myself, but I'm going to repeat myself all the time because it's your responsibility. It's no one else's responsibility. It's yours. So anyhow, like I said about 3 minutes ago, let's continue to open up the floor. And let's not forget that the speakers for Germany, the lady who's running Germany right now today is Adolf Hitler's daughter. So learn real history. Learn who the players are in your elected and public employees union structure.
All participants are unmuted.
So floor is open. Anybody would like to jump in? So, okay. Well, anyhow, nobody wants to jump in. Then we'd like to thank the new members that have joined us on the Facebook site as well as the YouTube channel. And we do thank the people that are joining. We do thank because people are getting it. They're seeing what we're doing. They're comprehending the angle that we're coming at from a total different structure than anybody else. We are not here for personal gain per se, but if you are willing to help us out with a gift, you could always send us, $100 gift cards, $20 gift cards. You have my email. You know how to get a hold of my address. It's out there. It's non-corporation. Remember, it's non-corporation. And so that is the main point, how to go after these things. Putting that structure together so that way you've got your rights and responsibility. Because like I said, nobody else is going to do your rights and responsibility. Nobody else cares about you when it comes down to it, do they? Who cares for you besides the woman that's sleeping next to you or the man sleeping next to you if you're in a male and female relationship? And if you're in the other relationship, your partner. Okay, but see, that's the other thing I want to add to make sure you comprehend. This gay and lesbian crap, I mean, you know, remember, I grew up in Haight-Ashbury days. I grew up in this stuff, literally. Okay, I knew this shit growing up. It was a fact of life. You know, it was nothing new. To me, it was nothing new. But the thing is, the Constitution, you comprehending this reality of the word I'm telling you, the Constitution says this. The native treaties of this soil says that. And for you to know and own your bloodline in that structure, you have to file for your bloodline. And also, too, if you're going to own your soil, you have to file your soil, look up the BLM land grants and all that. You can do that. See what's filed in your county clerk's office and do research on it, because your clerks sure don't want to tell you what's really there. I'll tell you that right now. Your clerks don't want to tell you that there's more there than you think there is. They don't want to tell you that. Because so long as that you're paying their salaries, rape, rob, and murder, that's how they get away with it, because that's how they get away with it. It's very simple. Rape, rob, and murder. And that's what your Christians do, is still the same thing. Oh, I had an affair. You know, I screwed up and I had an affair, you know, with my wife's friend or whatever, my boyfriend's whatever. See, this is the one thing that you got to comprehend, that people go, well, then I can go pray to God. God's going to forgive me. God forgave me. So, and this is the point. Okay, so God forgives you. No big deal. Remember, that's all by a corporation member. Who else? That's the point. Is you're being forgiven by a corporation? Are you a corporation? You know, are you a lawful native or not? I mean, when it comes down to it, this is how simple reality really is. So anyhow, if nobody else has got anything to respond to it, we're going to call it an evening, because I got a few other things I get ready to take care of. And then next week I'll get into some other stuff on filing your paperwork. But like I said, file your paperwork. You have to file your paperwork. An injured man or woman is the injured party. If you are not the injured party, you have no claim. And that is the one thing that you got to realize. And people say all the time, I'm filing this paperwork or whatever. You know, I mean, I hear people come up with some interesting things that I watch that everybody does on the internet, what they're doing. And so when you do that and you're not paying attention to the writing of the structure, you know, that is the one thing. You know, and also, too, in our groups, we want to thank all, like I said, I want to just restate, we want to thank all the new members that are joining our group site and, of course, the YouTube channel. But it comes down to, if you don't protect your child, nobody else is going to do it. And that's just the bottom line. It's just that very simple is the bottom line. So with that, may the Creator bless you. Without the Creator, we don't have the Great Spirit, Mother Earth, because then that way we don't have our children, we don't have our food, we don't have our structure. Like you said, we go by native structure here. We are not going by religion of a foreign country or foreign dictatorship. We are native men and women here, so we go by native law, and that is what native law says, and we don't want to be of a foreign country. So with that, you folks have a blissful evening, you know, and then people know how to get a hold of me on my new.org channel. And so anyhow, with that, you travel safe. Later, bless you.
Thank you very much, Ed. Again, this is Disclaimers by Ed Johnston. It's Saturday, November 16th, 2019. And honestly, guys, only one that'll ever be able to make your life better is you. Others may be able to give you information, but you got to act on that information. Nobody else can actually lift you up. You have to work on it yourself. So see you next week when Ed will be taking a vacation, but he'll still be here because, well, he just doesn't want.
And I'm going back in the hospital.
Exactly. It's a vacation.
Well, I don't consider that a vacation. I don't know what a vacation is. I think a vacation is where you're supposed to go do something where you're supposed to be able to enjoy it, not just be that you're in it.
Well, you're taking a vacation from stuff you've been doing that you enjoy, because can you not say that the research you're doing on a regular basis is enjoying it?
Well, no, I do that, but I'm going to still do the research and do the stuff when I'm traveling and doing my medical stuff. I don't stop.
Okay, so vacation is traveling someplace else and doing something you enjoy, right?
A vacation is when you're not doing your work and it's not doing all this work. A vacation is sitting there with a highball in your hand and sitting for the fishing in the river and stream or on the lake or hunting and fishing, and you're not doing this and you're not worried about nobody else.
Well, I believe there was a man that said if you love what you do, you will not work for a day in your life.